Then we have legal services, Nomfanelo Vatu, she's our director. Where is she? Oh, okay, she was just here, but she's coming. Then we've got Mamudishe Molope, our Program 4 Chief Director. Then we've got Acting Chief Director, Corporate Services, Mr. Vincent Sabanyoni. Then lastly, we've got Acting PLO, Ntate Tebello Mukiri. Without wasting any time, Chairperson, I will start with the presentation, then I will hand over to other program managers to deal with their respective programs. Our presentation there is the overview, is the presentation on the first quarter expenditure report, then performance report on program 1, then we've got a performance report on program 2, followed by program 3, legal services, then program 4, compliance, monitoring and stakeholder management, then our conclusion. The overview by myself. The performance covered in this report includes the expenditure, which is at that particular time from April up until end of June. It was 22.8%. Our target was, because it was for a quarter, it was 25%. Then you compare this financial year quarter with the previous financial year quarter. By that particular time, we were sitting at 16%, meaning that we are doing very good this financial year in respect of spending. Performance, we met the targets in most of the programs except program 2, but we went as management and came up with the turnaround strategy for program 2 to resolve underperformance, as well as the ED directive to see to the implementation of that particular directive of number 10. And we expect to meet the majority of the indicators by the end of the financial year. I must say, Chairperson, in respect of that particular strategy, turnaround strategy, we even take it up at our first quarter review last week, where we were blessed with the presence of the Chairperson in that particular session, together with the Deputy Minister for the whole of last week. We have taken the decision as management that we have to, the drastic measures there is the reduction of the backlog, the specific targets for each province, not just the overall percentage as contained in the APP. So we are going to set the targets per province, because you'll find that there are those particular provinces with lower workload, and there are bigger provinces, Western Cape, Gauteng and KZN. They are receiving lots of cases on a monthly basis. The monitoring of output by provincial heads and the acting ED, secondment of investigators to provinces which need them, and overtime, even on weekends for the investigators or caseworkers, active monitoring of performance and disciplinary actions for poor performance. I will hand over to the CFO. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Acting Executive Director. Afternoon, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police, as well as honorable members of the committee. My name is Lindo Ngongo, and I'll be taking you through the first quarter expenditure report of the IPID. The report is going to cover, firstly, the allocation of the IPID for this financial year as a whole, and then I will take you through spending, first at a program level, economic classification level, and then we'll look at the details of the spending of each of our programs. To start off, in terms of overall allocation, the IPID received a budget allocation in 15-16 of 234.7 million. And for the first quarter ended June 2015, the target was to spend 25% of this allocation. The IPID spent 22.8%, which translated to 53.6 million against a target of 58.6, which means that we were behind the spending target by 2.2%, or 5 million in terms of quantitative value. Looking at the spending per program, Program 1 spent 24% against the target of 25%, which is the administration program. Program 2, which is our core program, Investigation and Information Management, spent 23%. Program 3, Legal Services, spent 20%, as well as Program 4, Compliance Monitoring and Stakeholder Management, spent 20%, which meant that overall the IPID was sitting at 23% against a target of 25%. If you look at it per economic classification, compensation of employees was behind the target at 20%, and all the other areas of economic classification were above the target of 25%. With regards to compensation, the main contributor there have been delays that were experienced in the first quarter with regards to filling vacant and funded positions. And then with regards to your other economic classifications, particularly machinery and equipment, you can see there that the IPID has reported an unanticipated expenditure, and that was as a result of procurements that were made in the previous financial year where invoices were only received in the current financial year, so we had to serve those commitments. If we compare the first quarter spending trends overall, in 15-16 with the first quarter in the previous financial year, 2014-15, you can see that across all our programs, we've generally spent much higher than what we spent in the first quarter in the previous financial year. Overall, as we said, IPID is at 23%, and in the previous financial year, in the first quarter, we were at 16%. So there has been an improvement across all programs in terms of spending trends. However, this is still behind the spending target that we were aiming to achieve of 25%. The next table just shows you our spending in terms of actual quantitative values. Against the allocation of 234.7 million, the IPID spent 53.6 million, which translated to 23%. And as you can see that at the bottom of the table, that means we're 2.16% behind our spending target as at the end of the first quarter. In terms of details behind the spending trends, overall, in terms of compensation, we were 4.9% less than the quarterly target, mainly due to the vacant funded positions that we were unable to fill during the period under review. In terms of your other economic classifications, we reported expenditure much higher than anticipated, mainly due to orders that were placed in the previous financial year, but only paid in the current financial year. And for this, we had to do reprioritization of funds, where we had to shift funds in this quarter in order to accommodate those invoices that we had received with respect to goods and services that had been rendered in the prior financial year. So we have had to serve the commitments that we had entered into. With regards to your areas for agencies and accounts, this expenditure is only projected to take place later in this financial year once we do the relevant transfer of our skill development levy to the relevant SABCs. On the other hand, households are showing significant overspending of 38% above the quarterly target, mainly due to unforeseen expenditure as a result of employees leaving the department and thus having to pay out leave gratuities which are due to them. Looking more detailed at a program level, Program 1 for 15-16 was sitting at 24% in compared to 17% in the first quarter of the previous financial year. So this has been an improvement in terms of spending for this program. However, the program was still 1% behind the spending target for quarter 1. if we look at the details of how Program 1 has spent per sub-program, department management, corporate services, as well as internal audit were sitting at 21%. Finance services were sitting at 24%. Office accommodation at 32%, which meant that overall Program 1 was sitting at 24%. In terms of the economic classification within this program, compensation of employees was at 20%, and goods and services as well as machinery were meeting or above the spending target for the first quarter. And then the next table just shows you in terms of quantitative values, this program had received 74.2 million of the budget allocation of the IPID and has spent 17.4 million in the first quarter, which translated then to 24%. And this was 1.48% behind the spending target. The main contributors there is that in details, if you had to go into the details of the spending item, the bulk of the expenditure which Program 1 experienced under goods and services was mainly under computer services. And this is expected due to the centralization of ICT-related activities within this directorate, because this is the directorate or the program that also houses our ICT support staff. So that is translated into the expenditure you are experiencing in goods and services. Office accommodation also appears to register significant high expenditure levels. This is where we house our devolution of funds that the department receives for our office accommodation leases. And the expenditure is first incurred against the devolution of funds. And once this is depleted, it is then incurred within the other budgetary items of the directorate going forward. There's also been the result of the late delivery of equipment, which was planned for the employees which were newly appointed in this financial year, as well as replacement equipment which had started in the previous financial year, but unfortunately the invoicing and payment of those invoices only happened within this quarter. Program 2, which is our core program, which houses our investigation component, was sitting at 23% at the end of the first quarter for this financial year. In the previous financial year, they were sitting at 16% at the end of the first quarter. So there has been a significant improvement in spending trends. However, the program is still 2% behind our spending target. In terms of spending per sub-program in Program 2, investigation management was at 19%. Investigation services, which houses our provincial offices, was at 23%, information management at 31%, which means overall the program is sitting at 23%. In terms of spending per economic classification for Program 2, in all areas of economic classification, the programs either met or exceeded the spending target for the first quarter. If you look at it in terms of value, the Program 2 received a budget allocation of 150.8 million and spent 34.1 million in the first quarter, which translated to 23%, leaving the program 2.34% behind the spending target. In terms of details, the program has registered significant spending in compensation of employees, which confirms the IPID's efforts to strengthen capacity in its core service delivery program. There's also been in the management part of the financial turnaround strategy for the previous financial year was the procurement of investigative equipment. However, some of this equipment was delivered late and resulted in invoices having been incurred in this current financial year. The bulk of the expenditure that is also registered in the sub-program called information management represents amounts incurred on the case management system that the IPID uses in the conduction of its investigations. Across all the sub-programs in this program, we also noted increased expenditure in travel and sustenance, training of the investigators, as well as computer services. Just in details in terms of how each of the provincial as well as the district officers spent with regards to the first quarter. This slide shows the Eastern Cape was sitting at 26%, Free State 26%, Gauteng 23%, KZN 17%, Limpopo 27%, Mpumalanga 18%, Northern Cape 26%, and the Northwest 28%, Western Cape 24%, which means that the majority of the provincial offices either met or exceeded the spending target for the first quarter. In terms of our district offices, previously known as IPID satellite offices, the spending there is reflected Eastern Cape 23%, Free State 21%, Gauteng 21%, KZN 17%, Limpopo 26%, Mpumalanga 20%, Northern Cape 13%, Northwest 22%, and Western Cape 20%. One of the provinces that performed well across spending areas for both its provincial as well as its district office is the Limpopo Provincial Office, I think, which must be commended for meeting its spending targets. Program 3, our legal services program, was sitting at 20% expenditure for the first quarter. This is a considerable improvement if you compare it to how the program spent in the first quarter of the previous financial year. They had only spent 5%, so this is also a great improvement in terms of spending trends. However, it's still behind the spending target of 25%. If you look at the spending per sub-program in Program 3, legal support and administration met the spending target, whereas the two other sub-programs, litigation advisory services and investigation advisory services, were behind target, which meant that overall Program 3 was sitting at 20%. If you look at it per economic classification, most of the economic classification expenditure areas were behind targets, except for machinery and equipment. In terms of the allocation, legal services received a budget allocation of 5 million and was able to spend 1 million in the first quarter, which means that the program was 4.68% behind the spending target. As mentioned, all of the sub-programs except legal support and administration reported lower than quarterly planned spending. There was also, in terms of economic classification, the lower than planned spending was mainly in the areas of compensation of employees, as well as goods and services. However, we must note that in this program, they are also expected to account for an amount of 500,000 for legal costs currently sitting in a suspense account. Once this expenditure is registered, we expect the spending trends of this program to change to a potential state of over expenditure, which may mean that there may be a virement later on in the financial year to assist the program if need be. Program 4, compliance monitoring and stakeholder management, for the first quarter was sitting at 20%. Again, this is a considerable improvement from the first quarter in the previous financial year, where the program was at 7%. However, the program still was behind the spending target of 25%. If we look at spending per sub-program, compliance monitoring was sitting at 22%, stakeholder management at 8%, which meant that overall the program was at 20%. In terms of economic classification, in the area of compensation of employees, that is the area particularly that contributed most to this program not achieving the spending target of 25%. Overall, Program 4 received an allocation of 4.6 million and spent 941,000 in the first quarter, which meant that the program was 4.62% behind the spending target. At an economic classification level, it is noted, however, that goods and services reported higher than planned spending in this program, mainly due to unanticipated traveling incurred within this program. With regards to the way forward for IPID as a whole, with respect to the tools that management implements to continue to monitor spending trends, as well as have a platform where management can have interventions to resolve negative spending trends, the IPID will continue to present expenditure reports at the management committee meetings. This is the meetings as outlined in the IPID Act, where provincial heads as well as program heads account directly to the head of the institution with regards to performance, both operationally as well as financially. Responsibility managers have also been sensitized with regards to the slow expenditure that has been realized in the first quarter, and this expenditure is closely monitored to make sure that it realizes the desired trends. The filling of funded vacancies has also been prioritized and is monitored from a strategic level to make sure that the vacancies are filled within this financial year. There are also quarterly budget meetings, which are the IPID budget forums held with all responsibility managers accounting directly to the accounting officer of the institution with regards to their expenditure. In overall, the IPID has seen improvements in its first quarter spending trends as compared to prior financial years. However, the management of IPID continues to implement measures to ensure that future spending trends are met going forward. I'll now hand over to the program managers who will be presenting our performance in terms of operations for the first quarter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CFO. Thank you, Mr. Sibanyoni.
Good day, Chairperson and honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. My name is Vincent Sibanyoni. I'm going to present Program 1. In terms of the indicators for the first quarter for 2015-2016, the indicators, indicator number 1 is that the number of financial expenditure reports that should be submitted, the target is 12. And as a department, we managed to, the output was 3. So in terms of the first quarter, we managed to reach the target. The number of asset verification conducted was supposed to be 4 in terms of the target. We managed to conduct 1, which basically means that we're still on track with the remainder of the 3 other verification to be conducted for the rest of the financial year. The percentage vacancy rate per year, in terms of the target is that the vacancy rate should be below 10%. And at the end of the first quarter, our vacancy rate was standing at 12%. However, in terms of the end of August, we were 16.18%. The percentage of females employed by the Directorate at senior management level is supposed to be 50% of women appointed at senior management level. By the end of the first quarter, our output was 45% at the end of that quarter. And at the end of August, we were at 48%, which basically means that by the end of this financial year, we would have reached our target of 50% of women in the SMS positions. The percentage of staff complement consisting of people with disabilities, the target is 2% nationally. And as a department, we managed to reach 1.44. And basically, we are striving to sort of attract people with disabilities in the department. The percentage of trained officials, the target is that 50% of all our staff complement is supposed to be trained by the end of the financial year. However, due to some processes, we are currently coordinating that process that we trained, but that target will be reached by the end of the financial year. The number of candidates enrolled on learnership program, the target is that we are supposed to have 12. Learnership enrolled, currently we have 6, so we have basically a remainder of 6 that we need to achieve by the end of the financial year. The 6 we've achieved through the first quarter. The number of reviews of organizational structure conducted per year, we are supposed to review the organizational structure once per year, which is in November, which we are still going to do in our Lekgotla, which is coming now in November. So this particular target is going to be reached. The number of monitoring and evaluation reports produced on the attainment of strategic objectives, the target is 9. However, we've conducted 2 for the first quarter. In terms of the challenges for Program 1, strides have been made in terms of female representation. If you look in terms of our stats, we have 45% by first quarter. We have 48 as the end of August. We have 2 which are basically starting by the 1st of October. So we have will be fully representation in terms of female by the end of the financial year. As the CFO has alluded, we have a lot of procurement which was done in the past financial year, and that procurement led to that maybe invoices are submitted late, which sort of maybe affected the first quarter, whereby in terms of ICT invoicing, a lot of payment was made, which was basically due for the past financial year. Currently, there's delays in pre-employment screening in terms of filling the posts. We will see that maybe our vacancy rate is currently high. But then what we have done as a department, we introduced a vetting unit whereby you have a deputy director and you have 2 assistant directors, which will basically be focused on screening all our new employees which comes to the department. So basically that will basically fast track the employment of new appointees outside from outside the IPID. So this will basically improve. In terms of filling of vacancies, one of the challenges that the structure was basically approved late. It was approved around about July, August. So there are posts which we could not fill, although they were funded. So those posts basically late. We could not fill them because the structure has not been signed by the minister. So the structure was signed. Once the structure was signed, all those people were appointed. Thank you, Chairperson, and honorable comments.
Thank you very much. Next presentation.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, Trabo Tokolo, the Provincial Head of Western Cape, it is my pleasure to present Program 2. As already alluded by the Acting Executive Director of IPID, Program 2 did not meet most of its target, but however, the picture is not doom and gloom. We have set as the leadership of the department to come with mitigating factors and will be reporting on a different picture the next time we appear in front of the committee. In terms of our performance indicators, Chairperson, percentage of cases registered and allocated within 72 hours of receipt of written notifications. Our target was set annually at 90%, and we expected to meet 90% every quarter, which we did on this first quarter. And the number of the statistical reports generated on the number and type of cases investigated, recommendations made, and outcome thereof, we are expected to produce 4 reports per quarter, which we were able to meet on the first quarter. Chairperson, percentage of all decision-ready investigation finalized. By the end of the year, we are expected to finalize 58%. When this quarter ended, we were on 24%. However, I need to indicate, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members, that as of now, we are standing on 38%. So we are going there. With regard to the percentage of investigation of death in police custody that are decision ready, which means that are finalized, on the 30th of June, we were sitting at 42%, but I need to indicate to Honorable Chairperson that as of the 31st of August this year, we were sitting at 57%. With regard to the percentage of investigation of death as a result of police action for cases that are decision ready, our quarterly report was standing at 35% instead of 50%, but by the 31st of August, we were sitting at 43%. Honorable Chairperson, In terms of the percentage of investigation of discharge of official firearm, the target that we set for ourselves annually is 58%. When the first quarter finished, our report was standing at 29%. But I need to indicate to the Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members that we are currently, as of 31st of August, at 44%.
Maybe I just want to indicate we need only the first quarter because we're not in the second quarter. I know you want to sell your increase in performance, but let's just stick to the first quarter for purposes of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In terms of the percentage of investigation of rape cases by police officers, either in or off duty, our target was 62%. The end of the quarter, we're sitting at 45% performance. With regard to percent of investigation of rape cases while in police custody, we were expected to be at 62%. However, our performance was on 27%. With regard to percentage of investigation of torture cases that are decision ready, we are expected to be on 50% and our performance was sitting on 11%. Relating to the percentage of investigation of assault cases that are decision ready, our performance expected to be at 50, we performed on 20%. Relating to the percentage of investigation with regard to corruption cases, instead of being 50%, our performance was on 28%. And with regard to the investigation of other criminal and misconduct matters, we were expected to be at 50%. Our performance by the end of the quarter was at 32%. And the number of relating to the systemic corruptions, we are expected to identify 9 cases, and this is an annual target which will be able to report it at the end of the financial year. Chairperson, regarding the number of approved systematic investigations that were decision ready, we were expected to have 2 cases, but in this regard, we managed to investigate over 5 cases that were decision ready. And with regard to the backlog, Chairperson, our expectation was reduced by 50%, and by the end of the quarter, we were standing at 9%. Chairperson, regarding the percentage increase of criminal recommendations to prosecute that are placed on court roll, which is an annual target, we said that it will be an increment of 10%. With regard to the recommendation for disciplinary inquiries for the police officials, we also have got an annual target of 10%. By the end of this quarter, Chairperson, with regard to the recommendation referred to the NPA or the SPP, the DPP, within 30 days, our performance output was expected to be on 80%. We managed to refer 83% of the cases to the NPA for decision. With regard, Chairperson, to the percentage of disciplinary recommendations that were referred for SABs and to municipal police services within 30 days, we were expected to have made 80% of recommendations, but instead IPID by the end of the quarter made 94%. Lastly, Chairperson, most of our targets were not met, and this is mainly due to some capacity constraints, which despite that, the acting executive director has already alluded to a turnaround strategy that we have agreed upon. And also, Chairperson, with regard to some of the distances that were to be covered between the provinces and between the police station, as it is clear that in some cases our officials are not able to reach the scene in time based on the distance that need to be traveled. But however, as a department chairperson, we commit ourselves to ensure that we meet as program 2 most of the target that has been set. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. Then the last presentation, program 3.
Good afternoon, honorable members. I'm Ms. Nomfanelo Vaku and will present the quarter performance report for program 3, that is legal services. Starting off, I must indicate that as legal services, we have about 11 performance indicators, and we achieved on 7, and regrettably, first indicator on the percentage of contracts and service level agreements finalized within 30 working days. The target for the quarter is 90%, and unfortunately we could not meet the target there. As you'd see there, we received 3 contracts. Yes, they were finalized. However, they were finalized outside the 30-day period. On the second indicator, percentage of written legal opinions provided to the department within 21 working days. The target for the quarter was 90%, and the target there could not be reached as we had no request received for legal opinions. On the percentage of arbitration, civil and labor litigation matters attended to, our target of 100% was not reached, or if I may say, not applicable, on the mere basis that no matters were received for the quarter. On the percentage of oral legal advice provided to investigators within 24 hours, our target for the quarter was 90%. We outperformed, we reached 100%, and the stats there, we received 3 and finalized 3 requests for legal advice within the 24-hour time frame. On the percentage of written legal advice to investigators within 48 hours, our target was 90%, and we also outperformed there by 10%. We managed to secure 100%. 2 written legal opinions were received, and both were finalized within the 48-hour period. On the percentage of applications for policing powers processed within 5 days of request, target percentage is 100%, and regrettably, we only managed to secure 33%, as 6 requests for policing powers were received. 2 only could be finalized within the target, and the rest was finalized outside the 5-day period. On the percentage of policies reviewed for legal compliance within 21 working days, our target there was 90%, and that could not.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Honorable members, I've been informed that the whipper has agreed that there will be no notices of motions or motions without notices. Therefore, may I take the opportunity before we proceed to welcome the Deputy President to the House and invite the Deputy President to answer the proceed.
Can I speak, Chair?
Yes, you may proceed.
Chair, the EFF stood yesterday on a point of privilege on the use of certain individuals, bouncers or whatever it is, which are not allowed in this NCOP because we have not adopted their use in this House. The matter was then referred to somebody, and we have not received a response on that matter. The reason why we're raising it now is because we think it should be dealt with now because it is an ongoing violation of NCOP rules. If a member were to stand now and choose to exercise his or her right, the use of those hooligans can still be installed here, and we feel that it should be dealt with now.
No, thank you very much, honorable members. The information with regard to what happened yesterday and insofar as how the matter was resolved, there has been a ruling, and there are processes that will then follow in dealing with the matter as you raised, honorable member. It may not be an issue for this particular sitting because it was dealt with yesterday.
Chair. The reason why I'm raising it is because it may very well be an issue for this sitting. As I said, if a member were to stand up and exercise her right or his right to make a point or whatever it is, that member can, the bouncers or whatever they are, can still be called because it's a no man's land. There's no ruling on it at this point in time. And this is why we're saying that it should either be dealt with now, and we will give a leeway to say, if it can't be dealt with now, can we be given assurance that that those bouncers or hooligans will not be called into this House, which has not adopted their use?
Honorable member, I've heard you, and I've made a ruling on the basis that the matter was raised yesterday. There was a ruling on the particular matter, and insofar as the rules of this House apply, if you are aggrieved of a particular ruling that has been made by a presiding officer, there are processes that can be followed in order to raise your grievance. For the purpose of today's business, we are taking questions to the Deputy President, and I'm worried over, you seem to be anticipating something that we are not sure of. So may we please allow the proceedings of the House to continue?
I'm not satisfied, Chair, because there was no ruling as to, which is, and understand my point. I stand on a privilege of Rule 81, which specifically speaks to the privileges of members in this House. And it speaks specifically on that. There was no ruling as to whether the use of those hooligans is allowed in this house or not. And that is the ruling that we're hoping for today, this morning, so that all members here, including EFF and ANC and DA, are covered. It's no man's land at this point in time.
Can I recognize Honorable Sleme?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. We need to be assisted because some of us, we don't know who are the hooligans that are being used by Parliament. We need to be clarified.
Honorable Mokoena.
Yes, can I answer the question?
No.
Oh.
No. You have raised your issue.
Okay.
I have heard your issue. And therefore, I am appealing to you and other members to allow the business of the House to proceed.
Fine. We're happy with that. Except that I would then suggest that we get an assurance from the chair that those hooligans that have not been adopted by this House will not be used in this sitting until a decision has been made. Can we get an assurance on that?
Chief Whip?
I don't think, according to the rules of this House, any member here must hold proceedings to ransom. Point number one. Point number two. In this House here, we have honorable members. We don't have hooligans here. And that word hooligan, until it is defined, Chairperson, let us not entertain it in this August House. Until we all know what it means.
Okay. Honorable Mokoena. Honorable Mokoena. Once more, may I appeal to you that we continue with the proceedings of the House. If there is any other matter, can you then meet with me in the office?
I must stress the point, and I'm not trying to be disruptive here. I'm dealing with a matter which is of a privilege, and it affects this particular sitting and any other we're going to have after this discussion we're having. It pertains to the security of members. A member of the EFF here was assaulted by hooligans who have not been adopted. The use of, they've not been adopted in this House. We have not said to adopt the use of those hooligans in this House, and they assaulted her. And I'm asking that we be protected. That's what I'm saying. Until there's a proper ruling on the issue, can we have word from the presiding officer that we are protected on that issue? Thanks.
May I recognize the honourable member?
Honourable Deputy Chair, I rise on a point of order. It is very clear, crystal clear on our part, that the intention of Honourable Mokoena coming to this House today is to disrupt the proceedings of this House. And can we please submit to you, Honourable Deputy Chair, that we proceed with the proceedings and that Honourable Mokoena now be ordered to sit down and the proceedings of this House be commenced with.
Honourable members, may I protect Honourable Mokoena in the sense that he had the right to raise whatever that he wanted to raise. Honourable Mokoena, therefore, on the basis of that, may I once more appeal to the House to allow the proceedings of the House to continue within the boundaries of the rules that governs this House. Therefore, you do have a guarantee that as a presiding officer, I am going to act within the boundaries of the rules of the House. Therefore, can we continue with the proceedings of the House? Honourable Mokoena.
Thank you, Chair. At least today you have given me a chance to speak. I'm rising on a point that my honourable member there rose on. a point of privilege to say, I as an individual, I'm traumatized. Being traumatized, it is because of the ruling made in this house. And that, you must keep quiet, please. And that on its own, it will not be of a favor to me. I won't be free to speak my mind in this house, because I know when I stand up to speak my mind, somebody will order hooligans, bouncers, to come and assault me again. So we are appealing to you, Chair, to say, up until the matter has been dealt with, let's agree that there won't be any means of that. There won't be any calling of those hooligans in this house. The house will proceed in order, because as a house we have never ever adopted the rules that governs this. So we must be treated like such, and we must request to your kind self to give us an assurance that those hooligans won't be called again in this house. That's an appeal.
Honorable members, there is a consistent anticipation of something that we all don't know about. Consistently. And I have made a ruling, and I'm appealing to you, that we've got rules that governs the proceedings of this House. And these rules are protected by the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And as a result, there is nothing untoward that is going to happen that is outside of these rules that governs the proceedings of this House. And therefore, I'm appealing to you once more, honorable members. May we allow the proceedings of the House to continue. Honorable Mtile.
I'm happy that it is your own self who talks about the rules that are there. But last week, you happened to call those bouncers. And outside those rules, what is being said by Honorable Fana there is that this House hasn't adopted that, maybe we reach heated argument. Because always when you realize that, the arguments are being heated, you resort to calling hooligans. That is why he's referring to them as hooligans. Because we haven't adopted that, whenever, there are problems here, we don't have to call those ones. That applies only at NA, not in the NCOP. So, I would just say, with due respect, if we could have a replacement just for today, you don't preside over this sitting. You get a replacement yourself. You recuse yourself. That's my plea. Because you see, for as long as Honorable Tawi are here, we'll be afraid to talk. We're not going to talk out our issues. The timing is exactly not good. For the ruling party to bring you again, sit before us, when we are still, mourning the gruesome attacks on one of the members here. I'm making a plea.
Honorable members, once more, I'm appealing to you. And I do not know what is it that the member is trying to insinuate, because he is speaking as we are now. You have been speaking. You have not been intimidated not to speak. And as a result, I am appealing to you, honorable members, that we've got rules of the House, and the very same rules that you are referring to clearly states that if a decision of a presiding officer, if a presiding officer arrives at a decision and you are not happy about the decision of a presiding officer, it lays out the processes that must be followed. And therefore, I will appeal to you, honorable members, that we continue with the business of the House, and if at all you are aggrieved of certain things, there are processes that are clearly spelled out in the rule that allows you to raise your grievance. Can you close it for us, Honorable Mokwena?
Chair,
Honorable Mokwena?
Let me then close it then by saying this. If a member of the House, whichever party they belong to, decides to exercise their right to express their feelings, their thoughts, whatever it is, and the House or the chairperson is not happy with